why don't we go ahead and start with a bit of a foundational question for people that might not have crossed paths with you or Carvolution. How do you introduce yourself today as a person and as an entrepreneur?
My name is Miggiano. I'm a co-founder of Carvolution. We offer car subscriptions. I would say I'm known as a marketeer who's very excited about whether it's personal growth, revenue growth, to get the brand known, the product known. So I think, yeah, that would be me in a nutshell.
Let's dig in a little bit more into the company that you co-founded, Carvolution, and wind back a few years to the beginning of the journey. How would you firstly describe Carvolution to someone who hasn't heard of it before? And then a little bit about where you are at today and the journey as a company for context.
Okay, let's start with the part to somebody who hasn't heard about Carvolution. I would say it's great that they hear about it now. I would say Carvolution is definitely relevant for them if they need a new car anytime soon. And what we offer is the formal term is a car subscription. You get your car where you have a monthly fixed fee where everything's included from insurance, tire changes, and you use it how long you want. Basically, you can choose from a couple of months to a couple of years. For most of our clients, actually, we are an alternative to buying or leasing a car because what we do is we source like a huge volume of cars and tires, and then we kind of package it into that car subscription. And by the scale we have, we can also offer very attractive prices. So it's convenient, it's super easy for our clients, and also it comes at a very, very affordable price. And so your second question is where are we at? So basically we started in 2018. So I wouldn't say that we're at the beginning, but rather really in this scaling phase where we're still growing and still getting our process together. But also it's not as linear as we sometimes think or we learn in the books. But I would say right now we're really still sharpening the product a bit here and there. There's always some things you can optimize in a product. So I think we never lost this idea of we still want to make it better, more convenient, give more benefits to our clients. Still also when your company grows older, you have a different understanding of profitability, how do you work with costs, how do you scale efficiently. I would say we are in the middle of that.
What was the spark or the fundamental question or so that led you toward building something in mobility with your co-founders?
So it wasn't like a real, say, overthinking of should we do it or shouldn't we do it. I would say Carvolution was created like in a very natural way. The concept already existed outside of Switzerland, so I wouldn't say we have invented the car subscription. I would say we got inspired and we thought about this execution in Switzerland, and then yeah, I think for all the co-founders who joined, who started, it was really the curiosity to see, hey, does it work in Switzerland? Is the market here? And then can we also properly execute it? And I think today we're still all excited about the complexity of the case. I think what makes our daily business very complicated is also what keeps us thinking about it, optimizing it. So it's not a no-brainer case, but mobility is a huge business. Cars are a huge business. So I think it's very fascinating.
And so, as somebody who wasn't necessarily working in mobility before, what was that like for you getting up to speed on this industry, or what kind of drove you to solve this problem or to say, yes, this is the space I want to operate in?
Well, maybe for me a bit different than the other co-founders. I
Yeah.
was actually in need of a car at that time. So for me, it was also like, oh, I don't really like cars, but I need a car. So I really felt like a typical client of this product. I think this is also why I'm so in love with the idea of car subscriptions and how easy it is. But then yeah, of course, it wasn't like, oh, I need this, so we should start it. But it was more like, I need it. Can we check out if there's a market for it? Do some research. yeah, and then how was it? I don't know if it's different to any other industry, right? It's not that I did 7 different companies or anything, but it's a you go step by step and you grow into your industry and you start to understand how things work. You do a couple of mistakes, but I think any industry you can learn it, you can get into it. And yeah, what was I? 23 years old back then, so it's not that I had a work experience of 20 years or anything.
So it sounds like you kind of followed your curiosity on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt right, and but also I didn't overthink it. So it was like, why not? I like the product. It works outside of Switzerland. I think the co-founder team is super cool. How we can start it, and yeah, then we started.
Outside of just doing the work, which is probably the best way to learn, like you said, were there any things that you did in particular that helped you to kind of get up to speed faster on the sector and the function, right? Because you were so early in your career as well.
Well, when I speak to founders or people who think about starting, sometimes it feels as if they spent, I don't know, a year thinking about starting. I mean, that would be already a year where you could be already learning on the job, learning what the business is like. So for me, it really worked not to spend too much time actually spending for the like investing too much time in the decision if I should do it or not. I think this is a good accelerator because you don't lose that time. And I think that you need to be very clear also about what you want, what your co-founders or what other people in the team can bring to the table, because most companies, it's not a one-person show. And if you have good clarity there, I think this really helps to have a healthy development of a company, and it simplifies a lot of things.
When we spoke previously, you mentioned that you found that people could or often imagine that a company kind of starts the day that it's registered officially. But in your experience, what did the very beginning actually look like?
Yeah, I remember like you work a lot on getting your website ready. In our case, choosing the cars, deciding what's in there, making sure you have all the information you need on the website, your FAQs. You think a lot about the proper copywriting. So you invest a lot of time in bringing that website live, at least with a consumer product like we have that people select on the website and online. And then you think like, yeah, once you're live, that then things start and that everything goes crazy. But I think nobody waits for another website to go live. And that's a bit the reality check to be like, okay, just because you spend all your time and your whole team spends all their time working on that, it's not that the Swiss population or whoever your consumer is waiting for that. And once you're live, that they will start buying. So also, you need to market your product to improve it. There's never really a start of something and never really an end of something. I think so much more of these incremental improvements, like you do some steps forward and you do some backwards. And yeah, it's much slower, the development, than I believe me or also most founders would think it is, even though we had a very fast development, right? So
Mhm.
it's this reality check a bit of how companies develop. Yes, everything happens like simultaneously, but it's also, I don't know, maybe fundraising.
Mhm.
Fundraisings is also a good example. You work a lot as a co-founder team or as a management team to make it happen, but after this, it's not done, right? The work continues, and I think this is a bit the journey of an entrepreneur to be like, hey, it's never done, right? There's always a new challenge. There's always a next thing happening. So yeah.
So you really have to ask yourself without overthinking, if you're ready for, to make that kind of commitment, because you're really taking a step there that becomes a part of your life, I guess, right? For a long
Yeah,
time, potentially.
especially in the first year, I would say you just whatever is not done, you do it. In my
Mm.
case, it's from delivering cars to buying cars to, I don't know, finding out so many things about cars for somebody who doesn't know much about cars. It's very interesting, but at least then I got full clarity about their product. So,
Mm.
but with time, your organization is going to grow. You're going to share roles, like, or roles going to become more clear. Where is what being done? You're going to have a proper process. So it's not forever this absolute firefighting mode of things you don't know anything about. But later it's like it's different fires, but it's still a bit more organized. But also it's, I think, yeah, the bigger the company, the more important the decisions become. And it's you
Hmm.
have a certain legacy, so things become, complexity increases, but you have a better understanding of how to solve it than maybe in the beginning.
You mentioned, so you were like in that first year, you were researching, trying to find the cars, visit the cars, test drive the cars, I guess, or so,
Oh, we
or
would just
no?
buy them by phone call. And so you have 20 of this, okay, whatever, bring them, we need cars.
And did you end up getting a car? Because you said you were looking.
Yeah, well, since then I always had a car subscription, but I'm switching cars quite frequently, yeah.
And so, speaking specifically about that first year, what do you think most new founders underestimate in that first year?
In the first year, what do you underestimate? I think a bit of all those little things it takes
Mm.
from, it sounds super unimportant. Probably it is unimportant, but you still need an invoice or an idea how to send invoices. You still need working contracts for the people you will employ. You need those things, and maybe they don't align totally with your big vision, but somebody is gonna have to solve it, to think about it. And I think also a bit this frustration of that you have an idea of how fast things could work out, or I know I've seen
Mm.
so many business cases where I'm like, yeah, that looks awesome on paper. Very curious to see if it's gonna happen that way. I mean, even in our case, also our first business case, crazy things. But it's a bit this reality check you go for in the first year, that I guess you realize it's harder work than you maybe thought
Mm.
when you thought like about the concept and how it would be. I think also in the first year, you maybe you hire the first people, also the first people leave. For me, this was also like a crazy shock moment. The first time somebody left Carvolution, I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. That wasn't part of my idea how things would work here. Because for me, it's a very important part, right? And I think there also you, as a founder, when you start to come, you need also to, you're making a lot of personal experiences with that company, because everything is happening the first time in this first year.
So let's shift to focus more in on mindset and staying grounded, because you mentioned you can get tied emotionally to the company that you founded. There's a lot of personal experiences, like you mentioned. So, what helps you maintain the right distance so that decisions can stay clear?
Mhm. So I believe the right distance to a job, to a role, is very individual. I think people have their compass set very differently. I try also to think like, how was it with other jobs I had, and also there I was always very close to work. I always identify a lot with the work. But I think as a co-founder, and maybe also if you're exposed, or maybe even more if you're more exposed also towards the public, you get more tied to a company because it's also what others see, right? And then this also reflects on how you see it. So I think with Carvolution, it's kind of the first role where I was like, oh, maybe it's a bit too close. But I think it was less because I'm a co-founder, but more because I was seen so close to it from the public eye. And there, for me, it's like, yeah, of course you're a co-founder and you represent the company, but at the end, it's like it's just a job, right? Or just
Mm.
trying to build companies. And I think there you need to always a bit reframe this, to also, I don't think if you have too much pressure that you take good decisions, or So I think also with numbers, sometimes you need to make them a bit smaller to again feel confident to take good decisions. So also with the distance to a company, I think yeah, you need to have a very clear mind, clear head, not to make things emotional. And there you need to have a certain distance to be like, hey, it's a job and I'm in this role and I'm gonna do the best I can, but it has not much to do with me personally. Like me
Mhm.
as a person, as a human, right? It's me in a role. So, but yeah, there's some research I think also about it, and yeah, it's something I guess it's easy to make yourself fully dependent on your company because you spend a lot of time working and you're gonna talk whether it's during your free time, whether you have free time or not, you're always gonna be about this company. So of course it's very close to you.
Is there any other kind of practice that you have where when you're in the heat of it, you help to kind of remember, wait a minute, remember, I am not the company. I'm a different person. This is a role.
Yeah, I think it's friends, family. I think there you're like you're the same person you were before the company. So I think there it's super easy to keep a distance, but it's also you setting boundaries to say, hey, look, there's some days I don't want to discuss. It's also to really get the distance, and
Hmm.
I think that really helps. Yeah.
And so if I'm just thinking through the last, was it 8 years, if you had to name kind of one principle or a mindset that you rely on, I mean, every single day, or that comes back, has come back to you kind of repeatedly, what would it be and how has it shown up recently?
So it's not like a big crazy ritual or anything I do. I just, I mean, to really ask yourself, like, are you in the place you want to be? Are you generally happy with that situation? And I think if then you say like, yeah, actually I am, I don't want to be anywhere else. I think then how, yeah, it doesn't really matter how complicated or frustrating a situation is because you choose to be in it. So I think this is what always gives me the confidence to be like, okay, maybe it's not feeling comfortable right, or I'm not feeling comfortable in this situation right now, but it is still the place where I want to be, so I can be happy to be there. And also like to then, yeah, the moment you can answer this with a yes, you really enjoy what you're doing. And I think this is what for me is super important to be like, hey, what I'm doing this 8 or more hours a day is does it feel good? And if it feels good, so I think then yeah, keep doing it.
Let's focus into decision making under pressure. When you're facing a decision where there's no clear right answer, as if that happens often, what is your decision filter? How do you kind of make sure you move instead of overthinking, getting into a trap of analysis paralysis?
So I would say by nature, I'm rather a person who'll be like, yeah, let's decide. And if it's wrong, we're going to figure it out later. But also with time, I had to understand that some decisions need some more thinking. And I think there you're really like most decisions, you don't take them alone. Like you try to understand the different parts in your business. So there's discussions happening, conversations happening. And there at the end, yeah, most decisions are not black or white. Maybe from your individual position, they seem black or white, but you're always evaluating different standpoints, opinions. And I don't think that there's one decision where I'm like, well, if we had only decided differently, the world would be totally different, or the Carvolution world would be totally different. So most decisions, no matter how crucial they feel, you can still correct, readjust later. So I think this is a bit what I realize. It's never as black as white as we sometimes feel when we have the pressure to decide.
Is there a decision, recent or not, that comes to mind where using that filter helped you to move forward? Or one that you think, yeah, knowing this lens now, or this really helped me to move through it.
I don't know if maybe hiring is a good example. I think hiring is, yeah, you can try as hard as you want to be 100% sure that the person you're gonna hire is gonna be the right one. But at the end, you never know. You need to have them work in the team, see how the dynamics are. So I think hiring is something we do many interviews. We do a lot of yeah, case studies. We try to understand those people, but at the end, you can never be 100% sure that it's gonna work. And this is also there. Yeah, I think I need to give also my team the confidence to be like, hey, if you feel good about the person, then you take that decision to hire them. Of course, I also have a gut feeling in interviews, but it's just a gut feeling. Like I can't really help you then say, yeah, I would or I wouldn't, because I don't have any like clear arguments or reasons for it. So I think there with time you're a bit more chill. Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned something around the visibility that you had, in particular, representing Carvolution, and growth brings more of that, comes with pressure as well. Carvolution has gotten some great visibility and recognition in Switzerland. What have you learned about managing that exposure over time?
So I would say first of all, like you need to somehow make sure that your company is visible. I think this is a if you get to that, I would say dilemma of trying to deal with it, it's already good because you're somehow getting it this visibility, whether it's for investors or potential clients. Like companies need to be visible, otherwise they're not becoming relevant.
Mm.
Um, but for me, it wasn't like something I was planning. So it was like, okay, yeah, of course, in my role as a CMO, this visibility, this growth is one of my most crucial KPIs, but that all of a sudden the media would be so interested in that story that I would end up being in our TV spot. It was more like micro decisions that all of a sudden I realized, oh, now it's a very important part of this company. Um, but yeah, at the end it was how it is, but also there, as I said before, I think people, or at least people in the internet, are weird sometimes. And there it's important to get a certain distance between what is being said, what kind of messages you get, to be like, okay, this is maybe just a negative side effect of what it gets when a company or if you as a person get more exposure. But I would say overall, also, I got mainly benefits from it. I think it's also a huge luxury to have exposure, to be able to speak on stages, to give my opinion to things, to tell people what I believe is right, what values to have. So I think, yeah, it's nice also to be a role model for female founders, or maybe also for male founders. I don't know. So it's, yeah, it's there's mainly nice parts, but also it can be hard to be confronted with the media exposure, especially.
Are there any times and any instances or any practices you put in place now, kind of knowing what the side effects could be to kind of protect you from that or preserve, your energy, I guess, as well?
I think it's really just not reading it, really fully ignoring it. I think there's
Mm.
a and also like making sure that your family and friends like don't, because they also feel bad, right? You're always in an ecosystem or you're co-founder, so we need to be like, look, this is happening, but let's fully ignore it. There's a
Mm.
no need to confront that. That's really like a yeah, yeah,
So visibility, you said, is very important for the company, in particular, for investors, investment when you're fundraising or so to show traction. Let's zoom in on that part because I think a lot of folks struggle with that or would love more insight into some of that. When we think about investors choosing a founder or a project, a startup to invest in, trust. plays such a huge role. So from your experience, what's the best way to actually build trust with potential investors?
I think trust is always important, like no matter at what stage you're with your company or at what stage you're fundraising. I think at the very beginning, it's like trust in a founder's capabilities. Like
Mm.
later, it's much more about how was the execution so far? Do you have the right numbers? Like I think along this journey of a company, also like what is the carrier of this trust changes a bit. But at the very beginning, I think, yeah, you have to expose yourself as a founder and somehow create the confidence that people are like, oh, whoa, this person convinced me. I think she or him are really going to make this happen. And me as an investor, I want to be part of it and support it. So, but what is the best way? I guess that there's like very different ways how you can start getting into those ecosystems, but you need to somehow make yourself visible, and just sending a pitch deck. I think there it's they get a lot of pitch decks. So you need to make sure maybe to uh, speak to them at an event, or maybe you have previously worked at another startup where they're invested, where you could get an introduction to have already this kind of this first layer of trust there. And I think for me, this helped because during my university years, I was working for different startups. So already some investors knew like who I was, how I would work. Like they could already observe like my development working at different startups, like here in Switzerland or in Berlin. So it's a yeah, you need to find a way that they like you, they want to understand you, and they want to trust you.
So it's interesting that you mention how you were able to build trust with investors even before you had co-founded Carvolution. If somebody listening and watching has never been part of the startup world before, do you have any advice or have you seen what might be the most realistic entry point to understand how it actually works or to get some of that exposure and build that track record?
Y- Yeah, I would say either to really go and work for a startup first to show your entrepreneurial spirit there, and I'm sure that there's going to be a management or co-founders who can then also support you. And I think whoever is like creating a company and then realizes that somebody in their team wants to create a company, like you're full on to give them your fullest support. So I think this could be a good entry door. I think other than that, there's like accelerator programs, like a bit more formal ways. And then maybe if you have access to one potential investor, also like they also have their peers kind of. So I think maybe they also to get trust of one can help you get trust of many others. So yeah, but then it's a lot of companies or founders looking for fundings. You really need to put the work in and not be frustrated. And yeah.
Is there anything that you think founders might sometimes could be misunderstood about what investors are evaluating? And let's focus here on really that very early stage.
Hmm, maybe sometimes that we believe as a founders that we need to have figured out every detail before talking to investors. I think investors need to get a solid understanding of the business, which is easier if you offer car subscriptions than if you develop something super crazy, I don't know, in pharma. So I think to give them the opportunity to understand how you want to earn money with that business and how you want to develop it is crucial, but you don't need to go into every detail. Like at the end, they need to be sure that you understand what you're doing, and that they don't need to understand it fully themselves. Other than that, I think clarity on team, and also this Yeah, sometimes I observe this thinking that it's you against investors, but actually you get investors into your team, right? So it's not, you're not giving something away to get something else. Like it's really you're bringing two things together to create something out of it. This should be the mindset how you look for investors. And of course, there's tough discussions about value and this and that. But still, at the end, the fundamental idea is that two parties bring something, or multiple parties bring something to the table. And out of that, you're creating a valuable company.
Yeah, that reframe sounds really important, right? And it changes the conversation, doesn't it? So let's zoom to the Swiss entrepreneurial ecosystem today. Would love to hear your thoughts on, what are some of the structural things, or what's been your experience in this ecosystem? You mentioned some accelerators earlier. Generally, from your experience, what do you think's working well, and what, maybe needs to be changed to make entrepreneurship more accessible, not just from the beginning, but then kind of throughout the growth stages as well?
Mhm. I would say overall it's working well. Like I think for us, for Carvolution, it's going very well. So we have a good ecosystem with also a lot of trust. I think that this term trust is everywhere, but it's good to build a company in Switzerland where you know that there's a structure. What I think is a bit more critical is the whole how society sees startups and entrepreneurs. I know sometimes I fear we have like a shady image. It's like it's not like a real career or not a real job. So there, I don't know, maybe we need to work on it in education to be like, hey, building companies, developing products and markets, that's actually it's cool, it's fun, it's something we should all maybe be inspired or at least not be like, yeah, it's whatever. We don't really understand what you're doing, so it's not a real thing. And yeah, to have good education on it because I believe as a country, as a society, we need innovation. We all know that it's one part of a strong economy. So it should be something we should all wanna somehow support and yeah, make sure it develops well.
All right, so to close out, a real focus on some of the lessons and any advice that you have. If you were sitting with a potential founder who's ambitious, but maybe a bit idealistic, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
I know I'm very careful giving like this advice thing because for me, what was always really important is, yeah, as I said before, to be happy where I am and to be true, like sure it's the right place. So I think it needs, yeah, you shouldn't run behind like any tips and tricks, but to find your own way of how you want to be, how you feel comfortable as a person in this startup founding thing. And also like you don't need to be like every founder you hear in a podcast, right? You're probably going to have a co-founder team, a management team. Like you just need to make sure the different parts are well covered. So I think like if you're the first founder of a company, don't have like the idea that you need to cover it all. Just make sure that if you don't want to cover something, somebody else in your team can, so that there's no gap of know-how, of capabilities.
And last one, is there a question or an area that you wish people asked you or just talked more often about when it comes to entrepreneurship?
Mm, and I think the whole narrative about entrepreneurship, it's always like something between a huge exit and oh no, it had to close down.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of it happening between, right? The development of companies, the improvement, the changing a bit of a strategy. And I think this is where most of the companies are actually moving and oops, lights go off. Um, And I think this is the conversation we should have, that small development, fast development, it's all normal, but it's not a either huge success or huge failure. And to so maybe then also people are less scared and find it less shady if they hear about like normal developments, and it's not everything like an overnight success where a company all of a sudden came around. So yeah, to maybe talk about startups and companies a bit more realistic.
Thanks so much, Leah, for sharing your experience, your perspective, mindset, lessons, advice that people can apply or adapt as well. I wish you all the very best as you continue scaling Carvolution and look forward to hearing more as things evolve.
Thank you. Thank you so much.